Hello, everybody. Welcome to Buckeyes tomorrow morning for Friday, June 13th. The Texas game is in 78 days, the Michigan game in 169 days. Planning your next event, making it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle. Columbus's favorite food truck is serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddle.com. I am your host, Tony Gerdeman, for I believe the last day on this show. I'll be on other shows. Tom will be back, and everybody celebrate Tom's return when he does get back. Today is, boy, we've got a lot for you. We spoke with Ross Bjork, Ohio State's athletic director, on Thursday, and a ton of topics. He spoke and answered questions for an hour and 15 minutes. And so there's you can find all of the entire video at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. You can find it at BuckeyeHuddle.com. I wrote up bullet points of everything that he had to say. He covered the NIL space, the creation of an analytics arm for Ohio State athletics, the creation of an entire department to handle and market athletes for NIL purposes. His preferences for more night games at Ohio State, that could have been a show in itself. In fact, Kevin Noonan and myself have a Buckeye Weekly where we discuss these thoughts from Ross Bjork and his plans for a more enjoyable game day environment. And the logistics and the possibilities of more night games. So you can find that at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle as well as soon as I get it posted. So the subject today is we're going to be talking about the NIL stuff and the 20.5, not just the $20.5 million that is Ohio State is capped at, all schools are capped at, and how Ohio State is going to put forth their $20.5 million and how they're going to divvy that up in a sense. And so this first part from Ross is talking about the Buckeye Sports Group that has been created to help with the NIL, to market athletes, and just explain a little bit about where the money is going, who's handling it, and just overall the benefits the athletes are going to be getting from it.
Yesterday, or earlier this week, Monday, Buckeye Sports Group. I'm sure we have lots of questions about that, but essentially what that does is that brings all the resources that we've had in NIL, and it's been dispersed, right? Collectives, a little bit of Learfield, right? Athletes can get, agreements on their own. This really brings everything under one umbrella. So the foundation, 1870, the people involved in those groups, they want to stay involved, they want to help, and we embrace that. And so they've done a great job, but as we transition with Ohio State Sports Properties, it's really a marketing agency that can go out and arrange agreements between an athlete and a business. And I'll get into some of the house case elements here in a second. If you think about Columbus, 2.2 million people, we have 16 Fortune 1000 companies. We have 50 companies that employ over 1,000 people right here in Columbus. We have a ton of former athletes that live in our community, so we've got built-in connections. So really, really excited about the Buckeye Sports Group and the partnerships that have been created.
This next clip has Ross Bjork talking about Project 36, which is the self-imposed mandate to keep all 36 varsity sports at Ohio State, and the way the revenue will be dispersed. Interestingly, not all 36 sports are going to be beneficiaries of that revenue. Only 4 sports, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and women's volleyball, will be getting the $20.5 million, which will actually be $18 million because $2.5 million has to go to the new scholarships every year. So that's part of the deal, the settlement that maybe people didn't understand or realize, including most of us in the room on Thursday. So here is Ross Bjork talking about that, and also he declined to say how much of that would go to football, but other programs have talked about 80% or 75% going to football, the football schools that you would expect. But they've got metrics that they're using, so you would expect it's going to be something similar like that. Don't worry, football will get the bulk of the money if you're concerned about that.
So Project 36. So how do we adapt? So we started Project 36 in the fall of 2023. I believe before I got here about, okay, we know house case settlement is coming. How do we do it here at Ohio State? So there was a lot of planning that took place starting in the fall of 2023. So for us, right, and we know what the parameters are, there's $20.5 million of revenue share dollars that can now be given to the athlete. And as part of that, anytime you add a new scholarship in any sport, whether it's 1, 5, or 91 like we did, that has to count against the 20.5 million, up to 2.5. Does everyone follow that? 20.5, 2.5 million of scholarships. We added 91. So therefore, there's $18 million to distribute to our sports, right? And so the scholarship piece, I don't think was widely publicized at the beginning, but anytime we add a scholarship, we have to count it against the cap. And so for us, we will allocate the 18 million starting in 4 sports: women's volleyball, women's basketball, men's basketball, and of course our football program. We really try to use metrics in a formula while also balancing some Title IX approach in this as well. You know, last year, numbers create narratives, right? We know what we're talking about, right? So Patrick's smiling, he knows what I'm talking about. So look, people want to run with numbers, and this is how much this is. The key point in all of this is more opportunity for athletes than ever before, directly from the institution. And so we're not going to get into calculating how much this program gets or that program, but it's 4 sports, it's 18 million cash, and then that'll grow by 4% a year. And then it can also have a look-in period based on, you know, new revenues that come into college athletics. So that's how we set it up. Those are the 4 sports that we start with. We hope we can grow that. We hope we can expand. We'll continue to work within that.
Ross Bjork was then asked about Title IX, which has been a popular topic when this whole House settlement thing was being discussed, and how is Title IX impacted, and how much money will be allocated, and all of those good questions. So Ross answers those questions here, basically saying Title IX isn't about the money, it's about access and equality. And, well, I'll just let him talk about it.
How much time do we have? You know, look, we have an obligation to follow Title IX in several buckets. Proportionality of student body comparison to our roster comparison, and we're about 50-50. We're really, really close, and we're proud of the work that takes place to get that done. And then you have financial aid allocation, proportionality to your student body. So we meet those 2 prongs. The revenue share in the NIL world is not subject to Title IX per se, but we do have an obligation to support our female athletes just like we do our male athletes. That's the one great thing about the Buckeye Sports Group, is most of the collective work has been male athlete dominated. The Buckeye Sports Group allows us to spread it out, spread out the attention. So we can promote 100 female athletes and 100 male athletes just the same. Now the market may dictate different numbers, but from a Title IX standpoint, we think we'll be in a better position to support our female athletes.
Another good question on the day, and an afternoon full of them, was who decides who gets the money, how much the money, how much of the money do they get, and who signs off on all of this. So Ross talks about that and provides an answer that gives a new perspective on what college coaches are going to be dealing with here, now.
Look, it's, a lot of programs raced out and announced, and they really followed the House case settlement allocation, 75, 15, 10. What we did is we used metrics. So we said, okay, what does football drive? What does women's basketball drive? What does volleyball drive? And then we came up, knowing we'd have 18 million, what are some metrics that can put some parameters around how to allocate it? So that was a process through a lot of data, a lot of studying that our staff put together. And then at the end of the day, okay, this is where we think football is. So yeah, I signed off on that, was a part of that discussion. And then we'll give those allocations to our coaches, and then they'll have to decide how to divide it up. The other great thing about our scholarship model is in the past, you had a equivalency model. So baseball had 11.7, and they had to divide that up. What we did in this model is we said, okay, baseball, your cash equivalent of 11.7 was this. We're gonna add this to your model, and then Coach Hare will have the ability to spread that out as he sees fit. So he will almost have his own sort of scholarship cap within his budget, but he can spend that as he sees fit. And that's the great thing about our intelligence and strategy center, is that we'll be able to provide central resources to all of our coaches. But really the sports have to decide the revenue share bucket, the scholarship bucket. They're the ones that are accountable to that, and we'll support them centrally with resources.
There are still some roadblocks and hurdles that college sports are going to have to get over, and probably utilize the help of Congress to do so. One of the thoughts is, if student athletes were just made employees, all of this would go away, because then they could collectively bargain, and then there's no concerns about caps being put on them, because that would all be bargained. But nobody wants employment status, neither the players nor the universities, and Ross here talks about why.
It sounds like it's a solution, but it never seems like it's one that is seriously considered.
Yeah, that's that'll be a continued conversation. That conversation will not go away, whether that is in the halls of Congress from a federal standpoint, whether that is a local discussion. There's a lot of complications with it. It sounds easy that this would be a single source and this is how you do it, but you think about the fact that they are students. You think about what is sort of the work, if you will. We know there's a lot of time on it, right? And so I think the balance of the class, the type of work, the requirements, right, that are embedded in there, and then you take in state law, right? Each state has a different set of laws governing employment, governing collective bargaining. So you layer in just a lot of complications when it's just easy to say employment. Listening to this hearing today, there's a commissioner from a conference on the East Coast, and she was talking about if employment happened in her conference, she may be down to 2 sports, 3 sports per program. So the economics of it then layer out as well. So just a lot of moving parts. Could we ever get to a structure where they're codified as something, right? Independent contract or whatever, and the employment piece is kind of separate, then I think we need to continue to have those conversations. I've heard from a lot of labor attorneys over the years that it's really, really complicated. And so we need to continue to flesh that out, and that conversation is not going to go away.
One of the last questions of the day gave me perhaps one of the most interesting answers, because I'm not a law talking guy. So this was one where Ross Bjork was asked, basically the judge can say all of this stuff, and you've got this house settlement agreement that has these rules and these caps, but once you try to restrict what somebody can make, then somebody's going to sue. And Ross said, well, everybody's already kind of agreed to it, and explained that a judge has already agreed that this can be done. And so some other judge isn't necessarily going to come in and say, well, no. So he explains that, and I thought this is a point that nobody really talks about, and Ross seemed to be like, people need to know this and understand this. So here's the last point for you.
I think what people are missing is it already has stood up in court. It was approved. The settlement allowed for the autonomy for conferences to create rules of engagement. The rules were then created based on valid business purpose, a range of compensation, right, and associated entities. So that's what I think people are missing, is that a judge already signed off on this. And there's arbitration, which is really hard to pierce. If you really look at history and precedent, I'm not an attorney, I don't pretend to play one, but we get a lot of advice, right? It's really hard to pierce a federal court decision, and it's really hard to pierce arbitration that is binding by the court. So that's the part that people are not capturing in this whole structure, is that a judge already decided. You can make rules. The rules have been set, and now there's arbitration for the athlete. So look, is that to say that there won't be anything? No. But it will be really hard to penetrate, again, the court order, the settlement, and the arbitration process. There's no other way to talk about it other than this is what's been laid out in black and white, and We have to live by it. We have to stick to it. There has to be teeth when there is violations from College Sports Commission. And so, again, a lot of this stuff is fluid, but it's the right model that I think all of us are saying, this is clarity. Let's go. Let's put all this behind us, and now we can all move forward.
So there you go. That's Ross Bjork from Thursday. Like I said, a ton of interesting stuff. This was just a portion of it. If you want the rest of the rundown, you can find it at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You can find the entire hour 15 of him at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle as well. A ton of stuff, more than I can cover in a 15-minute show, but I hope that was informative for you and kind of broke down the way the money is going to break down for the Ohio State student athletes moving forward. So thank you all for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. We always appreciate that, and subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. And the absolute best way to help us and support us is to sign up at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member, $4.99 for your first month. Check us out there. We're there. June camp's going on right now. June official visits. If you're into recruiting, we got you covered there. There's a lot going on and even more coming. So now is a fantastic time to sign up. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later. Hey, Tom will be back. The next time there's a morning show, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Tom. I hope it's going to be Tom. We'll talk to you later.